Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, I Can Stoop to Your Level. This is a twofold revenge. Part is revenge on my behalf by someone else. The other part is not mine, but it was perpetrated by one of my clients who told me what he'd done almost 10 years later. I've been in real estate in Chicago, actually South Side and South-Southwest suburbs, for nearly 20 years. So, I'm helping a guy sell his condo. The place was absolutely gorgeous. The guy was a general contractor, bought it as a dump, gutted it, and turned it into a palace. What makes this even more entertaining is that the guy was 84 years old. His wife died, he sold his house, bought the condo, and figured he'd die there. Nope, he ended up meeting some spry little 77-year-old hottie and they were going to get married and live at her house. Let's call the seller Mike. A guy, who we will call Big FC King A** BFA, comes to see the condo, which is somewhat overpriced, but it was severely over-improved and I thought we could get that price. I didn't notice BFA's appointment time when I went to visit Mike for a signature on a price reduction. So, I just happened to be there when BFA shows up. BFA shows up and doesn't have an agent with him. This is a no-no, but since I'm there, I walk him through. He mentions that he called his realtor because he saw my sign. So, this wasn't a property that his agent actually found for him. Oh well, whatever. He seems unimpressed and leaves. Mike drops the price to $235,000 and wants $225,000 minimum because he doesn't want to owe anything after closing. BFA's agent calls me and says BFA wants to make an offer, but she's busy. She wants ME to meet with her client to write up an offer. I point out the legal issues with this and she's like, I won't say anything if you don't. I call my broker, not the same one in the previous story I wrote, and explain the situation. He asks his wife, also a realtor, to handle writing up the offer. Illinois allows dual agency, where I can help a buyer and seller at the same time for the same property, but I can't do it for a realtor with another brokerage. After my broker's wife gets done, BFA tells her he's having second thoughts and to hold off. During the next 2 weeks, BFA shows up at Mike's condo 7 times unannounced, no appointment, and has no realtor with him. Mike is a nice guy and thinks he's got a hot buyer, so he lets the guy in to look around, measure, write notes, take pictures, etc. I had no idea this was going on or I would have put a stop to it. Anyway, BFA talks to Mike who's ready to move. BFA says he knows Mike only bought it for $100,000 3 years earlier. Mike tells the guy that the lowest he's going is $225,000 because he took out a construction loan and put about $100,000 into the full gut remodel with high-end materials and appliances. I'm not kidding. The place was spectacular. 3-bedroom, 3-bath, living room, huge chef's kitchen, wet bar, jacuzzi tubs, formal dining room, vaulted ceilings, family room, loft, and every room was wired for phone, cable, surround sound, and internet, which was a relatively new thing at the time. Mike also showed BFA the net sheet I gave him, which showed that at $225,000, Mike would walk away with $1,900. BFA calls his realtor who calls me to have me make the offer that my broker's wife wrote up. However, BFA calls my broker's wife and tells her to lower the offer from $230,000 to $223,000 because that old man can afford to bring $100 to closing. The way the numbers work based on the net sheet and market time, Mike still would have walked away with a few bucks. I get the offer from my broker's wife and she tells me to enjoy the little gift and I'm not taking anything away. I'll explain this later. I present the offer to Mike and Mike tells me to just hold onto it because he has another appointment scheduled and wants to see if they'll make an offer. They don't, but Mike waits anyway. At this point, BFA has inconvenienced him multiple times and gave a low, I'm gonna screw this old man, so he walks away with nothing offer after having a very frank discussion. BFA is calling every day to ask about his offer. I can tell that he loves it. His agent? Nowhere to be found. Never got a call from her. Finally, 3 weeks later, BFA's calls have gone from innocent inquiry to angry screaming. No, there's no time limit on Illinois real estate contracts unless you put one in and he didn't. Mike finally signs off because he feels bad for me. He would have left BFA hanging another 3 weeks if he didn't feel bad about me having to deal with the calls. BFA does his inspection and tries to renegotiate. Mike tells him to drop dead since Mike is a general contractor and knows the work is done to code despite what BFA's inspector said. By the way, BFA's inspector was a friend of his. BFA still moves forward. BFA drags his feet with his bank and the closing keeps getting pushed back. Mike is pissed at BFA. Finally, we close. Instead of being in a room together, Mike and BFA are in separate rooms because they hate each other at this point and no one wants an explosion. BFA tries to renegotiate at the closing. Mike literally yells, he wants $100 because I don't have low-flow toilets? I'll give him $100, but I'm going to jam it up his ass to my F*** king elbow. I don't know if BFA heard it, but I would have loved to have seen the look on his face. Now the revenge had on my behalf. The closer comes in near the end and says, Jane Doe from XYZ Realty called to tell me to send her commission check to her office. I don't see that she's getting a check. I give her a copy of the contract and addenda and show her what my broker's wife added to it. Not only did she have him sign an exclusive buyer-broker agreement naming her as his designated agent, she also got him to write and sign, in his own handwriting, I inquired about this property because I saw Maiziri's sign. My agent didn't accompany me when Maiziri showed me the unit. Broker's wife drafted my offer. This basically showed that the other realtor didn't do her job, so I wasn't paying her. Buyers' realtors are paid part of the seller's agent's commission. So, I explained all this and on the advice of the seller's attorney, I amended my commission statement to give the other realtor a $50 referral fee. She cashed the check and called for weeks demanding her money. The Chicago Association of Realtors reviewed her case and told her to get lost. As a side note, many years later, I saw that she had her license revoked for multiple ethics violations. And now, Mike's revenge. About 10 years later, Mike's new wife died and he called me to sell that house because he was going to move into an assisted living facility. While talking with Mike, he told me about the things he did before leaving the condo. The fans had no chains or switches. They were operated with remote controls. He taped the remotes to the tops of the fan blades and turned them on high before leaving the last time. He removed the super high-quality garbage disposal that was super quiet and installed the cheapest and loudest one he could find. He shut off all the water valves for the sinks and toilets. He poured straight bleach in the toilet tanks. He claims that will destroy the mechanisms in the toilet tank or at least drastically reduce the life expectancy. He put water restrictors in the showers. He removed the wheels from the bottoms of the sliding glass doors and left them in a kitchen drawer assuming BFA would just throw them out assuming they were junk. He turned the little pins on the igniter for the attached grill so they wouldn't create a spark. He disconnected the igniter on the oven. He didn't break it, he just loosened the connection. I think there were a few other things, but I can't remember what they were. He said he got a nasty letter from BFA's attorney about the doors, oven, and grill demanding to be paid for the service calls for the repairs. He ignored it and never heard. The next one is titled, No Water Allowed? I was with Stop and Shop and after 2 months of being horridly abused by the higher-ups, I'd had enough. Well, one day I was doing cart retrieval. The demon of a deli manager would come out every 10 to 15 minutes for a smoke break and if I stopped even for a moment to even get a drink of water, I would get reported to my supervisor. I was 90-degree day and we were incredibly busy. I was constantly moving and very thirsty. Well, I stopped to take a drink of the water I have with me. She had a fit and I got reported for a 4th time. I get called in and, in front of customers, I get belittled by said supervisor and the deli manager has this wicked smile on her face. I'd had enough. I was never properly trained on registers, and it got so bad a manager would follow me up to the time clock to make sure I didn't clock in early. I had a bad habit of clocking in about 5 minutes early and was threatened with being written up for time card padding. The store manager was critical of wherever I parked, even if I was in employee parking, so I ended up parking at the furthest reaches of the customer parking lot to shut him up. My favorite one was how my brother, who I'd not seen for close to 10 months after being shipped off for the Navy, came in to surprise me during what was supposed to be my lunch break and the manager decided that was a good time bump my lunch up for an hour. I didn't get to see my brother for another week after that. It was bad. I looked at the supervisor screaming about being insubordinate and how I needed to come inside if I had nothing better to do, so I told him, in front of the customers, that he and the deli manager needed to get the sticks out of their uptight butts. I was fired, and rightfully so. I was happy to be fired in this case. But now, the revenge. I ended up calling corporate and used my voice acting abilities to convince them I was an elderly woman named Roberta, and I filed a complaint against each one of the higher-ups I had issues with, claiming I'd shopped there for years and saw the stuff that would happen in front of the customers. It wasn't far from the truth because people were reprimanded in front of the customers all the time. It was embarrassing. Corporate bought it. 2 people, I found out, got transferred, the deli manager got fired, and the store manager was replaced within 3 months. The next one is titled, ID Everyone? Okay, that's you too, Karen. When I was in college I used to work for my local movie theater. The job was amazing most of the time. You had a lot of freedom from the managers if you did your job right. On a busy night, this was the situation, I was working behind the bar. We had a system where we would sell tickets and concessions at the same registers. Most of the time this would work just fine, but one a busy Saturday night it would take a lot of time to take tickets orders, discuss seating in the theater and get all the food and drinks. On this evening everything was running smoothly. It was a buddy night, but the team was well prepared and we had everything under control. I was taking an order from a long-time customer, let's call her Linda. Linda was a nice woman and we always had a nice chat with her. She was 25 and had a subscription at our theater. This would mean it would show her picture on the app with her date of birth and a QR code. This way we could see that the person was old enough to see the movie. Linda was ordering some nachos and 2 drinks. Now I know that Linda is well above the legal drinking age, in my county 18, and had already scanned her QR code. You would get points for free stuff when you bought drinks and foods. I already knew her age was alright. So no reason to ask for any form of ID. So I'm here getting the order ready, and when I say the total to Linda, a lady behind her, let's call her Karen for obvious reasons, starts yelling, "Karen, you didn't check her ID." Linda looks over her shoulder, probably wondering why this woman is meddling, and turns back to me, "Do you really need to see my ID? I could grab it if you want to." So I'm here thinking, Karen should mind her own business. Me, no, need to, Linda. I know you're older than 18 and it also says so on the app. Karen, no, you need to check it. You need to check everyone that buys alcohol. Me, miss, I already verified her age and… Karen, no. Only a legal ID or passport is good to verify age. Sure, this is the case in a normal situation. But when a customer has a subscription at our theater, they already have to verify their age and name with a legal ID. So we accept the app as a legal form of verification. At this point, I'm already losing my patience. Why is Karen meddling in this situation when Linda is clearly over the age of 18? Me, miss, thanks for bringing this to my attention, but this woman is a loyal customer and we already know her age because… Karen, no. This is unacceptable and you should check her ID. I'm really starting to get annoyed and Linda is noticing as well. Luckily Linda is a chill woman and smiles at me while grabbing her ID. Linda, here it is, all good right? Me, sorry about this and thanks for showing. It's still not necessary though, Linda, no problem at all and good luck with her, she says while smiling and giving me a wink. I finalize the purchase and get ready to enjoy serving Karen. Karen has a major attitude and the order takes ages. She doesn't like the seats and changes them a couple of times. She also demands a student discount, which we don't have on Saturdays, and she is clearly older. Finally she orders her food and last but not least she orders a red wine. This triggers me instantly. I'm standing there with a big smile on my face like a kid in a candy store. You all see where this is going. I grab the wine and put it on the counter. Then I say with my most polite voice, "Me, can I see your ID, miss?" Karen, excuse me? Me, well miss, as you pointed out to me I should check everyone for ID. Karen, well I'm obviously older than 18. Sure, Karen wasn't looking anywhere near 18. But she didn't hit prime Karen age either. I would say she was early 30s, but with all that plaster on her face, she could pass for a 25-year-old. Me, miss, the woman I asked before, you were well over the age of 18. You insisted I follow the rules. If you don't have your ID with you I can't sell you the alcohol. Karen, preposterous. I demand to speak to the manager. Me, sure, I will get him. Now the manager this evening was Bob. Bob hated types like Karen and I knew he would stand by my side. So I go grab Bob and inform him of the whole situation. When I explained it all, Bob smiled at me with a huge grin on his face. Bob, let's go have some fun. So Bob walks with me to the registers and Karen yelled the whole story. Bob listens carefully and then reminds her of the rules and she needs to have some ID or she won't get her wine. Karen is done with the situation, I could clearly tell. The preview's already started, so she grabs her wallet and pulls out a public transport card. Karen, here you go. It states I'm old enough. Bob, sorry, miss. This isn't a legal form of ID. Karen at this point is bright red and I thought she would burst out in anger. Karen, I demand you sell me this wine. This is ridiculous and I'm about to miss the movie. Bob, nothing I can do for you without ID, miss. I should also note that when the previews are over, usually after 15 minutes after starting time, we can't let you go inside the theater because this will cause a disturbance for the other visitor. At this point, I wish I could have taken a picture of Karen's face. The utter face of defeat was amazing to see. Karen, fine. Just keep the wine. I'm going to see the movie and then I'm never coming back here. Bob, that's a shame, miss. That will be XXX, please. After the whole incident, I got a compliment from Bob for sticking to the rules and for defeating a Karen in her own game. The next one is titled, Insult Me. Sure, I'll write that 5-page essay. About your terrible teaching. I was a sophomore in high school, and my English teacher just sat and did nothing. I like English class and would say I'm pretty good in class and wasn't very disruptive, but the teacher I had seemed to have it out for me. I'd be sitting in the back, and she'd tell me to stop talking despite the rest of the class talking much more than I was. One day in class, we were talking about the lockdown procedure, and she told us we had to go under the desks, so I asked her, what about the fact that in a shooting that is more dangerous than defending ourselves, as the shooter would probably not just see the closed door and walk by without trying something? The school I go to is rather small, and so the chances of the threat causing the lockdown would more than likely be going after someone. I said that, and the teacher said, how do you know what they'll do? Are you going to be a shooter? I obviously wasn't, so I said nothing more, and the class ended, so I left. A few days later, she assigns an essay that we had to finish by the end of the class. It was a shorter day that day, and so class periods were shorter than usual. This had already annoyed the whole class, as there obviously was no time to write an actually good essay, and so, instead of complaining like I wanted to, I decided to write the essay on why she was a terrible teacher. I fulfilled the requirements of 5 pages and whatever the other ones were, and wrote about how she repeatedly singled me out and how she hardly knew the material she was teaching on. I also wrote about how she had no right to call me a shooter, as that could have actual repercussions that would matter. I ended up finishing with time left somehow and turned it into her. She had a surprising look of disdain towards me. A few days later, when she handed it back, I had of course gotten a poor grade, and she'd emailed my parents for being disrespectful, but luckily, that was one of the few times my parents sided with me against a teacher, so it wasn't too much of an issue. She did start ignoring me, so the class was a bit more peaceful. The next one is titled, Just Give Him a Bowl? Here's the biggest one we have, sir. Yesterday I decided to take my kids to an international chain restaurant. In this restaurant, the kids' meal comes with ice cream. But you have to serve yourself. That was a problem because there weren't any bowls beside the ice cream machine. So I thought, I know what to do. I'll simply ask an employee for some bowls. And that's just what I did. So he turns to look at the vast array of bowls behind him, some sauce-sized, some entree salad-sized, and many in between. And we realize that neither of us knows what size the kids' ice cream is intended to be. So he thought, I know what to do. I'll simply ask a manager. And he says, hey boss, what do we put the kids' ice cream in? Without turning around, the boss says, a foo * king bowl, what do you think? Yeah, but what size of bowl? The boss, with his inimitable charm, tact, and grace, says just F * king, give him a bowl. The employee looked back at the bowls, and then one saw him get a big grin over his face. I apologize for that, sir. I think it's probably these ones, he says, as he hands me 2 of the largest bowls they have in the restaurant, practically giggling with glee. My children were similarly delighted. The manager walked by when we were halfway through and made a noise like a startled opossum, but said no actual words. Definitely going back there. The last one is titled, I'm over by a $1.50 and you won't approve my meal expenses? Okay, I'll read the company policy. I work for an office and we have an 8-week busy season with mandatory overtime, 12 to 14 hours per day. During this time, the company agrees to reimburse us for dinner, up to $13 per meal. We just have to submit a claim with our receipts at the end of the busy season. Food options around my work aren't great, so I usually brought my dinner from home. But sometimes I was too tired to cook after a long day, so out of the 8 weeks, I purchased maybe 10 meals. 3 of those meals I spent $13.50, going 50 cents over the limit. This resulted in a whopping $1.50 overage, which my manager said it was no big deal and that I could include on my expense claim. He signed off on it and everything. A few days after I submitted my report, head office emailed me saying they rejected my expense claim and that I could resubmit after I removed the $1.50 overage. I wrote back saying my manager was fine with the $1.50 overage and even signed off on it, and they responded by telling me that they do not allow overages under any circumstances, that the $1.50 must be removed or they wouldn't approve any of my meal expenses. They ended their email with the advice that I should actually read the company policy next time. Fine, they were right and I was wrong. So I decided I'd read the policy very thoroughly before redoing my expense claim. Yes, the policy clearly stated a $13 per maximum on purchased meals. Oh, and what's this? The policy also allows a $10 per diem for meals you bring from home. I very happily removed the $1.50 overage and added an additional $300 for the 30 meals I brought from home. I should read the company policy more often. Some of you are asking if I got paid the $300, and the answer is yes. Many are suggesting the person was sincerely trying to help me out, but I'm not 100% sure because they were so snippy in their email. Also, when we were emailed the meal policy at the beginning of the busy season, there was no mention of the per diem and no one else in my department knew about it. Either way, I made sure to thank them just in case they were being sincere and I was just too jaded to see it. Thanks for listening.